Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. And the top book is a Western with cowboys and six-shooters and also mages and flying horses. But before we get to that, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And I want to thank editors E.S. Foster and Terrence Smith and community members Tim McHugh and Lilibet Dominguez-Torres for helping out today with the reviews. And Emma is here with us today. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
Oh, so let's skip over all the boring administrative stuff that you've already heard before and get straight to the books. And our first book, which is number 5 on today's list because we're counting down, is Forward Command by Daniel Gibbs. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. And this is the first of 6 books in the Galaxy Bridge Space Opera series. The other books are $1 to $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay $12 a month and you read all the Kindle ebooks you want. The 6th book is not out yet, but is available for pre-order and will be released in September. And the author has been on our list before with a couple of other space opera type series. So Terrence Smith read this for us, and he says that this book is very familiar to anybody who loves Star Trek. It has aliens of different races working together, starships exploring unknown regions, and enigmatic threats, which is also my kind of book. I was really hoping, hey, hello, cat. Proof that we're not AIs, right?
Let's say you have a visitor there.
All right, so people can't see the book. Okay, anyway. You're just gonna have to be distracted by the cat's butt. Oh. All right. Anyway, so a massive crystalline structure that lays waste to a starship and reanimates and assimilates its surviving crew into its structure. Terrence says that this is a biological level of terror that would give even Star Trek Borgs a run for their money. Okay, cat. You're distracting me. Okay, so he says the protagonists in this series are really likable and interesting. We first meet Colonel Mateo Lara, who is the command of a new ship, botanist Esme Lara, who is his loving and supportive wife. They seem to have a healthy relationship, although Mateo's work has some classified aspects that he can't share with her. The other 2 people who are the main characters are a businessman looking to cash in on some less than ethical opportunities and his nephew. And the businessman sounds like he'd be an ideal member of the Ferengi race if you guys are familiar with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And he's very familiar with the 34th and 35th rules of acquisition. War is good for business and peace is good for business. So I'm guessing that Terrence Smith, our reviewer, is a big Star Trek fan. Cat, make up your mind. Okay, I have the window right there, so that's why she's looking out right here. Okay, so Terrence thinks that the nephew is autistic because when his uncle tells him that he smells money, the nephew says money is digital, it doesn't have a smell. So Terrence says he's only a little the way in the book so far, but things seem intriguing, and he'd want to know exactly what this alien threat is and what the characters are up against. So I didn't mention this, but for the Free Fridays, we only read the first couple of chapters of the book because we want to get the review out to you as fast as possible so you can get the books while they're still free, because we don't know how long the books are going to be free. Sometimes authors make the books free as a short-term promo. So get the books quick while they are still available. I mean, they'll always be available, but you have to pay money for them later. All right, next is After the Ending by Lindsey Pogue and Lindsay Farley, the first of 6 books in The Ending, a dystopian sci-fi series. The other books are $4 to $6 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. And we reviewed this book before, and Lindsey Pogue also has had other books on our Free Friday list. And I read the beginning of this. And so in the prologue, we learned that 90% of people in the world have died, and survivors have developed some fantastic abilities. And the protagonist has found love with the least likely person. So I personally do not mind fantastic abilities, but I do mind massive death tolls, and I do mind romantic subplots or romantic main plots because I have a cold, cold heart and hate love and all things good and beautiful. So normally I would not stick with this book, but for you guys, I kept going. And after the prologue, the book starts right in with the flu. That's way worse flu than normal. It's sending people to the hospital. Everyone's got hand sanitizer and using it. And so at first I'm thinking, oh, it's a post-COVID novel. And then I checked, and the book came out in 2013. So the author was a little prescient here. And then over the course of the first couple of chapters, people are getting sick left and right, going to the emergency room and dying. And our protagonists are Danielle and Zoe, and they're very sympathetic. And I personally did not like them surrounded by all these horrors of the pandemic. And Zoe's roommate dies, and Danielle's boyfriend and best friend die. So, and then Zoe and Danielle both get sick, really sick, and the symptoms are super close to COVID. And I could not read this. It was just way too close to reality. It hit way too close to home. But if you like that feeling and you like that kind of novel and you want to check out an author who's a bit of a fortune teller, check this out. Okay, next we have a very different kind of book, Thaddeus of Beewicke by Louis Sauvain, the first of 5 books in the College of Sorcerers, a trilogy of epic fantasy. The other books are $9 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. And Emma read this for us. Emma, what did you think of this book?
Yeah, so I was really excited to get into this one because I am a huge fan of epic fantasy. I love super long books that just take eat up all of your time while you're reading it over the weekend. So this was an exciting read. It starts off with a very short prologue and it introduces Cedric and Hyacinthia. So these are the main character, Thaddeus' parents. Hyacinthia gives birth to Thaddeus in this prologue, and then it skips to a few years later. At that point, an old man named Sylvestris is wandering through the tiny village of Beewicke, that's where Thaddeus lives, and he meets Thaddeus. He's fishing by the lake, and this kid, he's about 10 or so at this point, and he thinks it's a bit odd that Sylvestris is constantly asking him a bunch of questions like, oh, do you enjoy living in this village? Do you enjoy beekeeping just like your father does? Because that's what the town's known for. Do you believe in the different fairy races that exist called the Pixie? But Thaddeus thinks that he's harmless enough, and Sylvestris goes on his own way, even if he does seem a bit odd in the long run. When Thaddeus gets home, he finds Sylvestris is sitting at his table and he's talking with his parents, and Sylvestris wants to know if Thaddeus is about to be apprenticed to anyone. He is, in fact, going to learn under the most important beekeeper in the entire town, just like his father did, and his parents are really excited about that prospect. And it's not exactly an option that Thaddeus favors because he feels doomed to spend the rest of his life in this small town. So then the old man asks if the boy could take him to a stone relic in the village. It's a very important stone. And we get some information about it as we go along. But along the way, as they're traveling, Thaddeus questions why the old man wouldn't want anything to do with him. He doesn't think he's really anything special. And the old man explains he believes the boy has wonderful abilities that the school he teaches at would be able to cultivate and use. It's called the Collegium, which is similar to what the name of the trilogy is titled. I thought that was a really cool thing there. But still, Thaddeus worries about leaving his parents. He wonders if he's even going to have a chance to go because of his apprenticeship. But when they reach the stone relic, it mysteriously glows near the old man. And it leaves Thaddeus really confused because he has no idea what this guy's about, what it is he does. And at this point, the readers don't know exactly what sort of abilities Thaddeus has. So it just adds to the mystery. And the next morning, Thaddeus wakes. He hears his parents explaining, oh, he's already apprenticed. He can't exactly go to this random school, you random person. But then through what seems like a combination of magic and a little bit of bribery with some gold coins, his parents change their mind in minutes. So before Thaddeus knows it, he is off to this mysterious school. And at this point, I really wanted to figure out what happens next because what does Sylvester's mean by these abilities? What is it that he finds so special about Thaddeus when Thaddeus isn't anyone really in particular? So I was immediately interested because I love fantasy and I definitely wanted to find out more about these different events. I will say that there were some details that occasionally did take me out of the story because it was like those things where sometimes the author would throw in a random detail, like the scientific name of the moon during a scene where we're being introduced to characters. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool and all, but it's not really necessary for the story, and it's just like something else that I'm going to have to probably keep in mind. And yeah. But there were other things too where it was like the entirety of Thaddeus's house was described room by room in detail, basically. So it's just a lot of those things that kind of went off on their own tangents. Another thing that I noticed too is this book definitely leans more into fantasy tropes. It's definitely something that comes across as very old school. So I didn't really see it yet in the first few chapters I was reading it as something that was looking at things in a new way and making things interesting in that respect. But it's still definitely something that I want to continue reading.
All right, thanks. Okay, so because sometimes you want classic fantasy tropes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
There were
like,
just a
well,
bunch of
it's not really my
YouTube
thing, but
there were just a bunch of YouTube videos around saying nobody writes classic fantasy anymore. Yeah, they do. There you go.
yeah, you
There's a
just
book
gotta
for
look
you.
for it.
All right, next we have, let me make that a little bit bigger so people can see that cover. Here we go. Minimum Wage Magic by Rachel Aaron. The first of 3 books in the DFZ, an urban fantasy series. The other books are $5 each, and they're both in Kindle Unlimited. And Lilibet Dominguez Torres read this for us, but since she's not here, Emma is going to tell us what Lilibet thought about this book.
It definitely seems like Lilibet enjoyed this book because she says it's unlike anything she's ever read before. It's set in a futuristic Detroit that is literally alive with its own soul and magic. So it's like the town exists because of this magic. Story is set in the future, but she thought the magic would be kind of boring. But as you get through the first 2 chapters, it is actually pretty interesting, she says. The main character is Opal. She works as a cleaner, someone who buys an abandoned or overdue apartment from the city so that they can scavenge and resell any worthy belongings left behind by previous owners. So apparently the job is usually hit or miss for Opal, but she has no time to waste since she owes money to a powerful and scary individual that could cause nothing but trouble if she misses her next payment. So things only continue to get more complicated because she comes across the dead body of a mage in her latest apartment, and there's nothing she can do about it to get her money back. And Lilibet says she's usually not a fan of books where magic collides with the futuristic world because it feels like the technology advances that are mentioned throughout kind of take away from the magic. But in the story, she says it wasn't the case. It's not like we got to see so much of this in the first 2 chapters, but it was enough for her to realize that it wasn't that bad in this book, futuristic technology and the magic are fun when they're done right, and she said that's what she enjoyed most about this book, is that it did do it right. She also says that she loved how nothing seemed to go right for the main character, no matter how hard she tried, because it's definitely something that makes the character sympathetic and makes you want to read more. So she said overall, the writing and the pacing of the story is great. The chapters are a little long, so it does make the story feel a bit slow, but she said in the end, she actually enjoyed the book and she was interested to see what would happen next with the dead body and Opal's death. And it makes her just want to be able to read it as quickly as possible and get into the world and the story that it's set in, figure out how the magic works. It's definitely recommended if you're a fan of this type of genre.
And I am. This sounds like a mix of like a cozy mystery, an urban fantasy, near future sci-fi. It's like my 3 favorite things. So,
Exactly.
and I'm going to be checking it out. I've already bought the free book with my own money because it's free. Before we go on to book number 1 in today's list, I want to thank our Patreon supporters, including our newest supporter, E.E. King. I also want to tell people that we've added a $1 support tier on our Patreon because we pay for original fiction. All of us are volunteers, so all the money goes for original fiction on the MetaStellar website. So you're supporting actual science fiction and fantasy authors when you donate. And we make all the stories available for free on our website with new stories released every week. And you can get them all in your email because we also have a newsletter. And you can get the Free Fridays list that way too, in addition to subscribing on this channel. But yeah, I want to thank these guys. And we're also going to try to do more to thank our volunteers and our Patreon supporters and our editors and all our other contributors too. So please join us. We'd love to have you as part of our community and as part of our team too. So if you'd like to join us for the Free Friday reviews. Okay, so let me make that a little bit bigger for a second so you can see these guys, and then we'll go on to book number 1. So thank you very much, our Patreon supporters. Okay, book number 1 on today's list is a fantasy magical Western. So Breaker by Amy Campbell is the first of 6 books in the Tales of the Outlaw Mages, a Western fantasy series. The other books are $6 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. And we've reviewed this book before, and Tim McHugh read this for us. And he says that this is a Western-like fantasy world. There are outlaws and 6-shooters, but there are also mages who practice alchemy. And he says he's not really a target audience for this kind of story. He loves magic, but he has a hard time getting into the whole Western theme. So the story starts with Blaze, a young man who's maybe has some magical powers. He's buying supplies for his mother's alchemy practice at the market, and some people in the shop give him a rough time, but nothing really happens. He leaves, he's on the road, and then he's ambushed and robbed. And the robber, Jack, is a mage. So he's got some powers, and he has a telepathic Pegasus flying horse to help him out. So Jack realizes that Blaze is also a mage, but robs him anyway. And then we find out what Blaze's magical power is, because he touches Jack's gun and the gun explodes. Tim suspects that these 2 mages and the Pegasus are going to team up to take on the Salt Iron Confederation, a large organization that threatens Blaze's family. So he says the writing isn't bad, but it takes a long time for anything to happen. It takes pages for Blaze to buy supplies, and it takes a long time for him to decide where to eat lunch. He says that the dialogue is a little bit flat, but there are also a lot of corny, quippy similes. So he says the book is not for him. It might be for me, but he says the book is not for him. But if you're interested in Western style stories, you might like it. And he says the world seems to be well thought out, and there's a lot of potential for an interesting plot to play out. And yeah, it does sound kind of interesting. It's certainly a very unusual premise. So I might check that out as well this weekend. Thank you, Emma, for joining us today. I hope you have some fun reading for yourself that you're going to be doing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And before we go, I want to recommend a couple of videos that you can watch, including an author, an award-winning artist, E.E. King, whose novel Clouds and Monsters we're serializing. There's 15 installments already up on our website and on our YouTube channel because she's reading the books out loud. So check those out. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.
All right.